Coming up, we'll take that question to our guests in just a bit. But first up, on the issue of Parliament logjam, it's not pretty reading. In 25 days of the budget session, there hasn't been much to write home about. A little bit of the numbers. The productivity in Lok Sabha has been as low as 33%, in Rajya Sabha just 24% this session. Out of the stipulated minimum 150 hours, the houses have functioned only for 46 and 32 hours respectively. Time spent on legislation was an abysmal half hour, and that's the most indicting statistic. Let me break down these numbers more. There were 25 sessions, 25 days in the entire budget session. Money lost during this period is 166 crore rupees plus, out of the total cost of conducting business for these many days, which was 225 crore rupees. That's because Parliament ideally should have worked for 150 hours per house, but the work was an average of just 39 hours per house. So that's about 111 hours of work that were lost. Only 3 bills were introduced as far as this session is concerned. 34 bills are still pending. Treasury and opposition benches have been attacking each other over the logjam. Initially, it started with government demanding Rahul Gandhi's apology, remember, over his remarks in London as the second phase of the budget session began. Then opposition started protesting over Adani probe and disqualification of Rahul Gandhi. And there is no end to this blame game. BJP claims that opposition parties are creating the ruckus, while the Congress claims the government is not giving them time to raise issues. BJP says Congress's black protest, for example, is an insult to Parliament. But Congress says the protest is to safeguard democracy itself. The issue of corruption, like I said earlier, is at the forefront, with BJP today accusing the Congress of crony capitalism, something that the Congress is accusing them of today, while the Congress's chief, Mallikarjun Kharge, for example, said that they are very suspicious of the fact that the BJP is not constituting a JPC on the Adani issue. A united opposition took out a Tiranga Yatra from Parliament to Vijaya Chowk. The protest march was led by Congress President Mallikarjun Kharge, and several opposition parties joined in. Pro-leaders of several opposition parties, like I said, skipped the curtsy meet chaired by Speaker of Lok Sabha, which is not really a sign that augurs well as far as functioning of parliamentary democracy is concerned. But of course, there have been a lot of protests outside on the streets. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister launched another attack on the opposition, especially the Congress, today on the occasion of BJP's Foundation Day celebrations. He said Jativad and Parivarvad is Congress's political culture. Few opposition parties have a Badshahi mindset. He added that Congress has kept women deprived over the years. On the other hand, the BJP is the one that has empowered them. And that opposition only does drama over issues like social justice while insulting tribals and poor of the country. Finally, and this is a big focus today, he also attacked the Congress over corruption, saying corrupt Congress couldn't do half of the work that the BJP has managed to do in as many years. So that's the big debate coming up on Plain Speak. First up, is corruption squarely the top issue of the 2024 battle? And if it is, exactly who does it benefit?
अगर आप डेमोक्रेसी को जिंदा रखना चाहते हैं तो अपोजिशन की बात भी सुननी चाहिए, और वो हठधर्मी पे हैं, इसीलिए ये सब सेशन पूरा वॉश आउट हुआ।
आखिरी दिन को भी कांग्रेस और उनके साथियों ने बहुत गलत तरीके से डिस्टर्ब किया, हाउस को चलने नहीं दिया, काले कपड़े पहन करके संसद का फिर से अपमान किया।
नफरत से भरे हुए लोग आज झूठ पर झूठ बोले जा रहे हैं। अपने भ्रष्ट कर्मों का खुलासा होते देख ये बेचैन है, हताशा से भर गए।
Let's go across to the guests who are joining us. Niti Jain from the BJP, Ikram Singh Sandhu from the Congress Party, Deshratan Nigam is lawyer and political analyst, leans towards the BJP, Suman C. Raman, political analyst, also joining us. Let me go across to Ikram Singh Sandhu on what the Prime Minister said today. Even as the opposition, including the Congress Party and most prominently the Congress Party, is trying its best to throw this Adani complicity charge at the government and directly at the Prime Minister. Look at what the Prime Minister said today. I highlighted some of it in the at the start of the show. You know, he talks about corruption, he talks about parivarvad, he talks about Badshahi attitude, and all of this is an attack on the Congress first and foremost.
Shivani, you want me to respond to that?
Yes, on what the Prime Minister said today, especially on the Congress Party. You couldn't do half the work the BJP government has done. So UPA versus NDA directly. And of course, we all know that under the UPA years, corruption was the biggest issue. And that issue is being brought back by none other than the Prime Minister.
Good evening to all. You know, the Prime Minister and the BJP and the Prime Minister, of course, in particular, are past master at spinning a thing. Now, he is talking about all these things. What are we talking about? There is a certain amount of corruption that has happened on the Adani issue. You have a JPC and you have a transparent investigation as far as that is concerned. That he's not willing to address. That is something he's not willing to talk about. But he tom-toms that my record on corruption is very good. How is your record on corruption very good when a corruption charge is fairly and squarely against you?
But what's the corruption charge? No, but this is the problem. What's the corruption charge against the PM or the government led by him? I'm not sure if the Congress party has been able to articulate that very well. Apart from the fact that you're showing some pictures of Mr. Adani and the Prime Minister together, I don't think it's unheard of for politicians and industrialists together seen in pictures. Your leaders have been seen with Mr. Adani too. In fact, your current governments have running projects with Mr. Adani, whom you're calling corrupt.
Great. So by the same token, what was the correlation between Congress and the Colgate scam? Again, there were business houses which were involved in the coal auction. What was the correlation there? What was the correlation between the Congress and 2G? There were again telecom companies. There were international companies like Etisalat. There were international companies like Uninor. There were international companies like Swan had a tie-up with. What was the correlation there? If you can have apples and apples and you can have apples and oranges.
But what's the charge against the government? I'm not understanding. What has the government done which has somehow led to some corruption? Exactly who is the beneficiary of this corruption from the government side? If there is a quid pro quo, somebody makes money. Where has that money gone? Which government functionary has benefited? Which minister has benefited?
Okay. So now in the Adani case, I'll just take that one case. It is in the public domain that shell companies were based out of Dubai and through Mauritius, more than $3 billion have been pumped into India. Whose money is this? Who is the person who is round-tripping this money into India? There's no answer. The government has to investigate that. Now, they have given the investigation to SEBI. They say SEBI is going to... SEBI does not have the wherewithals to go to Mauritius and understand how shell companies were working.
Fair enough.
This is something that the DRI, something that the ED, and something that FFIO have to investigate.
Okay,
but
I take that charge, but that's the charge against a private individual and a company. I am not understanding how are you bringing it up to a charge against the government and the Prime Minister? And that brings me to my central question. This is something you've tried in the past with the Rafale deal. It doesn't work because it cannot be made in such a vague fashion. That, oh, something is wrong. You can't say that for a Prime Minister. You have to produce more. And the Prime Minister's approval ratings, the Prime Minister's personal image is unimpeachable, especially on the issue of corruption. You've got to do better than this.
Shivani, I'll beg to disagree there. You're a very senior journalist and I respect your views. But as far as corruption is there, the Teflon coating of the Prime Minister is now fading away. People have started questioning him. You go on the ground and now people really question it. They say कि जब कांग्रेस होती थी कोई करप्शन का चार्ज होता था तो कांग्रेस उसका जवाब देती थी ये प्राइम मिनिस्टर जवाब नहीं देते ये और चीजों के बारे में सवाल पूछना शुरू कर देते हैं
that's a good note for me to take it to Niti who's raising her finger and Niti that is a question that is a legitimate question the Prime Minister is not addressing the issue directly even the ministers the BJP ministers are not quite addressing the issue they're just saying we've said what we said we don't believe what the Congress is saying, but there is something fishy coming out. Now, you may say you have nothing to do with it, but the government cannot ignore if some things are coming out.
Okay, Shivani, first of all, I didn't know we were discussing Adani right now. The point being, and this is what the government has said, the agencies and the courts are looking into the matter. Not everything needs to come directly to the parliament. And this would set a precedent that every time an individual is insinuated with something, everything needs to come to the parliament. The agencies are working on it, the courts are working on it, and that remains the standing point. But ultimately, the topic that you called me to debate on, the point being, was this enough to wash out an entire session for the opposition?
But you're guilty of washing out this session too. You were also disturbing the proceedings for Rahul Gandhi's apology. One would argue that is also not sufficient enough to stall parliament proceedings, especially by the treasury benches.
No, so that point remaining that Rahul Gandhi is a repeat offender, either he is abroad or he is here, he is a motor mouth, he goes on and says things that insult us as a country. I think as a citizen of this country, we are embarrassed with everything that Rahul Gandhi goes abroad and says. And that needs to be addressed as a country. Every individual or an industrialist need not be addressed in the parliament. But the point being, Rahul Gandhi, as an MP and a member of the opposition, needs to apologize for what he said about the entire country. You cannot be going out and asking the West to intervene in whatever is happening here. And that remained the point.
No, the argument still stands. Was that also worth it for the government and the treasury benches to stall parliament?
So are you saying
these
it
are
is
twin
okay
issues
for the opposition member to go out and insult an entire country and not even acknowledge that in the parliament? They're standing there, they're completely trying to divert attention from all the work that has been done by the government. They're trying to divert attention from what they have said, from everything that they say, either about a community or about an entire country. So are you saying it is not even supposed to be acknowledged in the parliament as an important...
No, but we saw that play out. And I think, Neeti, I think in this case, it would be fair to say that you could have allowed Rahul Gandhi to actually speak. There were a few days still before his disqualification that he actually could have spoken. Of course, what happened later was completely unprecedented. No, but you could have allowed him to
speak. But they had to not come into the well and start screaming as soon as the session started. The speaker said he would allow everybody to speak, and not once did he say, no, I'm not going to let Rahul Gandhi speak. But the point was, it was the opposition that did not even want to come and clear out those issues. It was always in the well.
I think in this case, as I said, and I stick by what I said, it was plain for everybody to see. Both sides were equally guilty. Neither wanted proceedings to go on for their own reasons. How justified those reasons are, well, we leave it for the viewer to decide. But I am indeed, Neeti, discussing the twin issues, not just of the parliament logjam, the numbers for which I've run, but also how the battle for 2024 is shaping up, and it seems it's very clear that corruption is coming back as the biggest issue. Yes, Sumant, you wanted to come in.
Yeah, Shivani, I heard you say at the start that these charges against the Adani group are vague. I mean, the charges are crystal clear. There are 38 shell companies registered in Mauritius, many of them in the same address, who do not apparently have any kind of employees or any kind of business activity. Billions of dollars comes into them, and billions of dollars then gets invested in Adani companies. Now, Rahul Gandhi is asking only one question: whose money is this 20,000 crore which has been invested? Now, after that, even today, there was a story about the Adani group and how certain contracts were won, coal mining contracts were won with a company which is essentially a related company but was shown to be a competitor and so on. So I think that the point is nobody is accusing the Prime Minister.
That's
the
not
reason
true.
Why, 1 second, no, 1 minute, let me finish. Nobody is accusing the Prime Minister if he would simply say, look, we are ordering an inquiry into it, we are ordering a JPC, or we are ordering a Supreme Court monitored. Now, the Supreme Court is not, and I repeat, is not inquiring into these shell companies. Let's
Yes.
not even kid ourselves. They are not.
Okay.
The Supreme Court is inquiring into the regulatory framework and how to improve it. They are not here to tell us, they have not in any part said we will inquire into the shell
Fair
companies
enough.
in Mauritius
Actually, I
and
did
tell
not
us whose money
disagree with
it
that.
is.
I did not disagree with that. Suman, just one clarification. I did not say that the charges against the Adani group are vague. My question was that how are you linking it to the government and how are you linking
Because
it to
the
the Prime
government seems
Minister?
very keen.
One second,
Look,
one second.
more
Now let
than
me
the
finish.
Adani group,
Suman, now
the
let me
BJP
finish. I'll give you
spokesperson
time.
are
I'll give you
defending
time. Now let me
Yeah.
finish. You say
Okay.
that nobody is accusing the Prime Minister. That's not true. That's patently not true. We see the statements that are being made on a daily basis
One second.
against
One
his
second.
personal, relationship
Yeah.
and personal culpability. In fact, if not from the Congress party, you look at the statements that come from other opposition leaders. You look at what, for example, the Aam Aadmi Party's Arvind Kejriwal is
When?
saying. He's directly
When?
saying that this money, first of all, where that 20,000 crore rupee figure has come is also a matter of
No, it's
debate.
clear.
But
No, $3 billion.
even if I let
Yeah.
that slide,
Yeah.
one leader is already saying that money is the Prime Minister's money. The other is saying, where has this money come from? Why are you protecting it? So basically, you have insinuated.
No.
So my question
No,
was, what
one
is the
second,
charge
Shivani.
against the government? I'm not asking about
Shivani,
Adani.
One second.
Yeah.
One second. Now that you've finished, let me answer. Nobody accused the Prime Minister of any misdemeanor on day one. Had he ordered an inquiry, had he said, yes, I've got nothing to do with this. If Mr. Adani has got a problem, let him face it out with the law. This whole matter would not have blown up at all.
That's not true
But
at all. I
today-
fundamentally disagree with that.
One second, Shivani.
So,
Today,
sir, if the agencies
night
are
after
looking
night,
into it,
night
why does
after
everything
night,
come to the parliament? Only because you're trying to make it
spokespersons-
political.
Why are BJP spokespersons night after night on primetime television sitting and defending Adani on a matter they know nothing about? He may be
We are
innocent, he may
not.
be guilty.
That is what we are
He may
saying.
be.
Let the
Why-
agencies
how
do their
you
work.
know? The agencies have not been
Adani
told to
has
do their
nothing
work.
to
That's
do
the
with
whole
the BJP.
problem.
That is exactly
The
what we are saying. You are trying to
the
make it
agencies
political.
have not been told to do their work. That is what the opposition wants. The
So
opposition
basically,
wants
you're
an
saying
inquiry.
again, you're putting the agencies in the कटघरा and saying कि the agencies तो काम नहीं करती हैं, सिर्फ
Madam,
JPC ही
madam,
काम
one minute.
करेगी, ना Supreme
Where
Court
is-
काम कर रही है, ना
where-
SEBI काम कर रही है.
Look,
That is
look,
exactly the
2000
point. You are trying to make everything
2020.
political.
1 minute, madam.
And then you come and say कि नहीं,
2020,
हम इसको political नहीं बना रहे हैं.
2020 charges were made. 2020, these matters were brought into the public domain. Mahua Maitra wrote a letter to SEBI asking for an inquiry. SEBI wrote back saying that they are looking into the matter.
Okay.
3 years they have been looking into the
Okay,
matter.
can I
and they are
come in
looking
now?
into it
Can I
must
come
be
in now?
very
Suman,
deeply,
one of our guests
because it's
hasn't
taken
spoken.
3
I think
years.
you've made your point, but I want it once again because I was saying that I fundamentally disagree with what Sumant is saying, that this charge against the BJP or the Prime Minister has only come because the BJP did not act. I fundamentally want to remind everybody.
Because the government did not act.
One second. Sumant, now please don't speak over me. Fundamentally, the moment, since the day that Hindenburg report came out, there have been direct charges against the BJP government and against the Prime Minister. So let's not fool ourselves that this only happened because the government did not act.
charges
From
were
day
made in
one, the
2020.
insinuation has been
Sorry,
that there has
sorry.
been something hanky-panky
Charges
as
have
far
been
as the
made from
Adani
2020.
company and the government is concerned, and the Prime
Charges have
Minister's
been
name.
made
No, sorry,
since
Sumant, please don't
2020.
shout
I'm
over me
sorry.
now. Sumant,
I'm
I gave you
sorry.
enough time. Otherwise, I'll have to mute you. Please.
2020.
No, one sec. Don't go back to 2020 now. Let's stick to the
That was when
Hindenburg
the
report,
charges were made.
which has been the issue that has been brought into the parliament. I'm focusing on that. From day one, there's been an insinuation of the Prime Minister. My question has only been, you need to do more to insinuate against the Prime Minister. That's all. I have not questioned the charges against the group per se. Desh Ratam Nigam has been waiting. Fundamentally, Deshji, the big question is, the BJP feels confident enough, and I feel like the Prime Minister himself is leading that charge. He feels confident enough that even after 10 years of his government, where a lot of people will ask the question, how much corruption have you been able to tackle? How many convictions have the agencies been able to get on the big ticket corruption cases? Some of them have fallen apart. He is bringing back his corruption plank, which was very much in vogue in 2014. We all know why, after the 10 years of the UPA government. Why do you think he feels this is the pulse point of the public again today?
Well, in fact, Shivani, most of the cases that you see today are of prior to 2014. The cases against Samajwadi Party were lodged on the complaint of Mayawati. Against Samajwadi Party, they were lodged again by the complaint of Mayawati, and vice versa. Mamata Banerjee made complaints against Congress. Congress made complaints against Mamata Banerjee. So most of these cases are passed except few ones. And our judicial process does take time, and these are complicated matters. Yes, some people say the conviction rate is low. But let me remind you, statistically speaking, there have been 32 judgments delivered on this ED issue, out of which 25 or 26 convictions have taken place. And conviction rate, Shivani, only comes after conviction, not before conviction. So that would be about 80% of conviction.
No, but a lot of these cases, Mr. Nigam, as you're saying, are pre-2014 cases. Exactly how many of them have seen any conclusion? Is that not a fair question to ask?
Yes, certainly a very fair question, but that process is controlled by the judiciary, not the government. Their job is to put it before. There are thousands of documents and hundreds of witnesses which have to be examined. It does take time. And the conviction rate out of at least 32, 25, 26 convictions. And I said, when people start, saying the conviction rate is low, they compare with the cases of number of cases filed and number of convictions taking place. No, that is not the way you calculate it.
Okay.
Now, secondly, let me also point out, today, Prime Minister gave a clear example while speaking today as well, and right from on 15th August from the ramparts of the Red Fort.
Yes, last year.
Yes, he clearly said, and we clearly made it very clear, you have to hate the corruption as well as the corrupt also. There should not be any social acceptance of corruption. And he has made it again very clear even yesterday that corrupts will not be spared under any cost. Therefore, he's very, very clear. And why these people are targeting, the Prime Minister? Because he has stopped their corruption, and also is after the dynastic kind of policies or the rules, the family-based political parties. For them, families are more important. Because of these two factors, the glue of corruption, which is uniting the opposition, that is the only thing. Otherwise, there are no common meeting grounds of these opposition political parties. Only corruption charges because they are facing.
Okay.
And they
let Mr. Ikram also come in on that. Just respond to that. Fundamentally, the problem for the Congress and the other opposition parties is, as much as you may defend your government's role in 2G or Colgate, we all know what transpired them. These were auctions, licenses that the government monitors, and they're supposed to be duty bound to make sure that there are no losses. We can argue some specific cases. I don't want to go to them. Fundamentally, there was a problem that came out during your government. Nobody can deny it. We can't say that for the last 10 years we've heard of such cases and such problems at the very top echelons of Indian government. So that's your problem. That's fundamentally the perception problem for the Congress party and the other opposition leaders. All of them have been mired in corruption charges well before Narendra Modi became Prime Minister.
Yeah, Shivani. Now, the one thing for which you can give complete credit to Mr. Modi is that on perception and spin, he's a past master. I've already said that. Now, when you were talking about 2G, I'll just give a small example. The opposition at that time demanded a JPC. We agreed to a JPC. A JPC happened. The case went to the court, and everybody has been exonerated in that case. So that is as far as the 2G is concerned. Same thing we are asking here. The same standard should be here, but there is total stonewalling as far as our demand is concerned.
But the two are not similar cases. Ikram, the two are not similar cases. It brings me back to the question, what's the government role you are questioning as far as this Adani probe is concerned?
I'll just give you a very small example.
Yeah.
There was this privatization of the airports that was supposed to take place.
Yes.
There's a Niti Aayog note which says that not more than 2 airports should be given to one entity.
Yes.
Adani Group walked away with 6 airports. On whose behest was that note changed?
Okay, fair enough. But what does that have to do with the shell companies?
I didn't get you.
What does that have to do with the shell companies?
That has to be that somebody in the government pulled the strings. It was Niti Aayog, which is an arm of the government, which says that because we don't want monopoly in an infrastructure stream, not more than 2 airports should be given to one entity.
Fair enough. Even if I take that as a charge of why more than 2 were given to one single entity. Once again, even if I take that as a charge, that's a procedural charge against the government. You are welcome to challenge it. But how does that translate into the shell companies and whose money it is?
I'm not saying
the two
that.
are not related.
I am not saying that, Shivani, because
which
you said
probe
that
do you want?
don't talk about shell companies, talk
Yeah.
about what the government has done.
No,
So
but you
therefore, I've
exactly
given
said that the
example.
biggest allegation today of corruption is the shell companies. When I ask you about shell companies,
that
you
I've
talk
already
about
said.
contracts.
No, in
When I
shell
ask you about
companies-
contracts, you talk about shell companies.
No, I'm not.
Shivani,
Because
can
you
I come
said
in?
that
Yeah,
for
Mr.
shell
Nigam,
companies-
1 second.
Because for shell companies, you said you cannot blame the government. So therefore, I gave you this other example.
Okay.
Coming back to shell companies. Now, whose money is this that we are talking about? 20,000 crore is not peanuts. It's not a small change. Is it Chinese money? Is it dirty money? Is it round tripping of money? Hawala money which has gone out of India? Why do you have 30 companies in
Today's
Mauritius
article
who have
speaks
no
about a
employees?
Chinese national being involved in Indian infrastructure projects, an Indian
Absolutely.
Chinese company.
Okay.
That is again a huge risk. It's a
Okay,
security
fair
risk.
enough. Again, it's all of that is fine. These are legitimate issues to raise, but I don't understand how the Prime Minister's name has to be dragged into a corruption case,
Why
a
not order
scam.
an inquiry?
Why is
Why
everything
not?
titled a
Why not?
scam? No, why
Because-
an inquiry is not
Because
happening
the
doesn't mean
Prime
it
Minister
justifies
is
the allegations in the
stonewalling.
first place.
Because
These are
the
all
Prime
propriety or
Minister
other
is
issues.
stonewalling.
Contracts,
Because the
whether
Prime-
there is a Chinese link, these are all separate issues. It's not corruption linked.
So
There's
then
no
if the
connection
Prime-
happening of corruption and a scam here.
So Shivani, if the Prime Minister is so clean
No.
and this is something that he is totally against and he's not at all involved in it, why doesn't he go for the simple mantra that
Okay.
sunlight is the best disinfectant?
Okay, fair enough. That
Have a
question I will allow
JPC.
Neeti to answer one more time.
Exactly.
Mr. Nigam, you
Open
wanted
up
to come in 30
everything.
seconds,
And
please.
of course,
Mr.
if
Nigam.
the Pope
Yes,
says
yes.
that
Mr.
he has
Nigam.
no
Yes,
so be free.
let me point out few things. Please remember Manmohan Singh's statement in 2012, where he admitted corruption in 2G scam in so many words. It's all available in his interview.
Well, ministers
Can
were
you
sacked.
deny that?
No,
Yes,
he never
and
did
can you
that.
deny that? And let me tell you why the people got scot-free from the courts, because the agencies, and I'm making with a sense of responsibility, agencies did not invoke Section 13(1)(d) of the Prevention of Corruption Act. And anybody who's a lawyer can tell you that that's the and the Supreme Court had appointed the amicus curiae, Mr. Grover, out there.
Okay.
He had no experience
Okay,
of
let's
trial.
not go back to those
Second-
cases because
Yeah,
fundamentally
and
we are not
secondly-
discussing
secondly-
them.
secondly-
Suman, 30 seconds.
Secondly,
When did
secondly,
Mr.
secondly,
Nigam is
Can
not
I come
aware.
in?
Yes, Neeti, I'll give you the final
Judgment.
word. Please, one by one, everybody
No,
show
I
patience
think-
so that
I think
everybody
Mr.
can get
Nigam is-
uninterrupted time. Yes.
secondly,
Yes,
yeah,
Mr.
secondly,
Nigam,
Shivani,
finish.
secondly, Shivani.
Sumant, 1 second.
Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Nigam, finish. Quickly, please.
So far as Adani getting airports, I'm not his lawyer,
Yeah.
but there is a tendering process. The lowest court get it, and the Congress governments have also are giving him projects because of his
No,
lowest
that's
court
not a
and L1
sufficient
status.
response to why if there is a cap, then why is one person getting more? No, that's not a sufficient response to that. Mr. Suman Siraman.
No, I think Mr. Nigam is not aware of the 2G history. The matter was they had at least 2 years' time, 2.5 years' time. The judgment came in 2017. Mr. Nigam is perhaps not aware of that. The judgment came well into the NDA tenure. They had time. If they wanted, they could have filed a supplementary charge sheet as well. So let's be very clear that in fact, the judgment itself, the judge has written. Initially, the agency started off, the prosecution was keen on getting a conviction. After that, I sat the whole day. Nobody even turned up. Sometimes even the investigating officer didn't turn up. It's all there in the
No,
judgment.
it
Please
is
ask Mr.
certainly
Nigam
a
to read
mess.
it.
But my
No,
fundamental
the
discussion
point
is
is-
whether
my
the
point is,
NDA or the UPA or the
Today-
Congress plus the
today's
allies
article-
are ahead
today-
on that corruption narrative, or whether it's going to be the Prime Minister-led BJP. Neeti, please respond to why one must not suspect to something being wrong. Because the BJP is so cagey on the Adani issue. Forget ordering a probe. You don't even address the issue.
So, Shivani, like I said before, that everything in this country has a procedure. Just because the opposition is curious about certain things, the procedure cannot be changed. The agencies are looking into it. If we are not trying to defend ourselves, I don't think there is any reason for us to come out and say, ki nahi, humne nahi kiya. There is nothing for us to defend ourselves really. And the agencies are doing their work, and I think we should
Agencies
let
are
them do our work.
investigating. Is she giving us some new-
I have
new-
been
Which
very
agency is looking
patient
into
when
it?
you were
Can you please
speaking.
tell us?
I have been
Which
very
agency is
patient when you
looking
were
into
speaking.
it?
Please let me finish now. Please let me
Yeah,
finish.
let Neeti,
The
please.
essential point is that the opposition has always raised points before every elections, be it Rafale, be it Pegasus, be it any other matter. I think this is just another matter for them to divert attention from everything that the government is doing. Like Nirmala ji said, that they did not want all the economic positivity or the economic good things that the government has done. They did not want that to be discussed, and that is why the entire session was a washout.
You can't blame
And
the
that is all-
opposition for that.
all
They will
problem-
highlight what has not gone right. Then obviously sing praises of the government. But whether this corruption narrative will sustain till 2024 in the manner that the opposition is raising today, we'll have to wait and see. On that note, I do thank all of our guests for joining us. I have to shift to our second story. Yet another Hindu temple has been desecrated in Canada after being spray painted with anti-India graffiti. This happened late on Tuesday night. The target of the vandalism was the Baptist Sri Swaminarayan Mandir in the town of Windsor in the province of Ontario. As seen in past such attacks, anti-India, anti-PM Narendra Modi graffiti was painted. The CCTV footage of the desecration was released by the local police, showing two masked men defacing the temple. Police is investigating this act now as a hate-motivated incident. There is a suspicion that separatist groups could be behind this incident of temple vandalism. Despite the Indian government raising concerns to this mounting aggression, especially of separatist-linked groups in Canada, the required action is less than satisfactory. This is now the fifth such attack that has taken place in Canada in less than a year, and I mean temple defacement. 2 months ago, the target was the Sri Ram Mandir in the town of Mississauga in GTA. Slogans spray painted, including those attacking India and the Prime Minister, and describing the founder of the separatist Khalistan movement, Jarnail Singh Bhindranwale, as a martyr. Prior to that, on January 30, the Gauri Shankar Mandir in Brampton was similarly desecrated. Before that, a statue of Mahatma Gandhi located at the Vishnu Mandir in Richmond Hill was defaced in July last year. Weeks later, also last year in September, an episode of such vandalism occurred at the front entrance also of the Babs Sri Swaminarayan Mandir, this time in Toronto. India has condemned these attacks and raised the issue with Canadian authorities. Listen.
This is a very unfortunate incident and we condemn it. This issue has been taken up with the Canadian authorities. And with the same request that we have made on earlier occasions, please catch the perpetrators, please try to prevent, ensure that this does not happen again. And I hope that Canadian authorities are able to take action on those lines. But certainly, yes, let me reiterate, we condemn it and it has been taken up with the Canadian authorities.
While there's an obvious separatist Khalistani angle to such attacks taking place, especially in countries like Canada where they have large presence, is this also once again a reminder that there is almost a free run for Hindu haters? Because this is not political messaging alone. This is also messaging against a community that is taking place. Let's go across to the guest joining us. Former diplomat Ashok Sajjanhar is joining us. Dr. Makran R. Paranjpe, Professor JNU and political commentator. Anang Mittal is joining us from the US, political analyst. Professor Paranjpe, I want to come to you. You know, I shudder to think if such repeated attacks, and these are 5-6 attacks that have taken place in 1 year alone against temple premises in Canada alone. I'm not even counting what has happened in other Western countries or Australia for that matter. If such attacks had happened against mosques, against churches, I shudder to think what the response would have been. And here we have complete, placid to no response from authorities.
Well, I think I heard that in Windsor, they are trying to apprehend the suspects and so forth. But I think much more is expected from Western governments. And we've had attacks in Leicester, we've had them in Brisbane, we've had them in Melbourne. So this seems to be a concerted attempt by these elements, these Khalistani elements abroad, to create a dissension and hatred between Hindus and Sikhs, which is very unfortunate. So that's one side of it. And the other side of it seems to be the lackadaisical attitude, the laxity on the part of law enforcement and government officials
Yes.
in these countries, because they have intelligence and they know what to do. It happened in UK as well. So it seems to me that the Indian government has already mounted pressure. When the Australian Prime Minister was here, he was spoken to about this, and he himself said this is intolerable. So I think that there is already an attempt to stem this tide of rising hatred against Hindus. But this is a part of a larger problem, is what I'm trying to say. And fundamentally, what is at stake is the use of the freedoms offered by Western societies to carry out anti-India activities. And the strong message needs to go out from India that this will not be tolerated.
Now, I can understand political activity against India being allowed, and I know that in diplomacy, all such groups are used, especially by these Western countries, against countries like India, who they want to pin under their thumb. Sorry for the use of that expression, but it's true, right? Now, I can understand political activity being given space. They have liberal laws for that, but I don't think they have liberal laws for places of worship being attacked. In fact, they lecture countries like India on minorities and how protected they are, Anang Mittal. The US does it, Canada would do it, other countries would do it. I'm just failing to understand how 5 Hindu temples, a minority religious place, have been attacked consistently, and it keeps happening.
Look, I think the wider question is that people do need to understand that Hindus are a minority in these countries, and I think the real answer here is that the community also needs to get together and condemn these attacks, and also work with interfaith religious leaders. I think I understand that we want to get some aid and some help from India, and India does need to condemn these attacks. But I think people here also need to come together. The Hindu community needs to get support from communities here also. And I think that's the real problem that I'm seeing, is that India and the Hindu community are being conflated. And that's the sad fact, that politics is completely making a giant toxic mess out of what should be a community issue, a minority issue, not a geopolitical issue.
No, but Anang, why is there no condemnation of the kind that you would see if any other minority community is attacked? Why is it that Hindu hate is okay? Defacing Hindu temples is okay? Is it because Hindus are less organized? They have less political capital? But then that only shows how hypocritical and shallow these messaging from these countries are. You only care if it affects your political constituency.
Absolutely, you're absolutely right, and that's true. That's very much true. But I think some action is being taken. So organizations like the Hindu American Foundation and Kona are trying to organize us, and I think that's the real answer: is that we do need to get together. We need to lobby our officials. We need to tell government officials that these kind of attacks are just completely unacceptable, and that they do need condemnation from the local authorities and from the national level authorities. But then that again goes to places like Canada, where the national authorities seem to turn a blind eye to this. But certainly in America and other countries, we're seeing some levels of understanding from officials, but that needs community engagement for sure. That's what we're trying to do.
For a large country of now 1.4 billion people, India is termed intolerant. Unfortunately for us, a lot of Indians only do it. So I can't quite blame, foreigners alone for such narratives. But why should a Canada not be called intolerant if a minority community keeps getting attacked there and their law enforcement is unable to act? They may make some measures now. Ashok Sajjanhar, I want to come to you. The vexing issue here is, what can India do? What can Indian government do? They do make statements. They, of course, do press on their counterparts. Is there more that we can do?
No, I definitely think we can do more on that score. A couple of things, Shivani, and the first point that you had made, that if it was, similar attacks against mosques, would the host governments take it so very casually, take it so very easily? And the answer all of us know is no, it wouldn't be like that if it was any other minority community. Because I think some of these communities, particularly as far as the Muslim community is concerned, they have been able to build up this whole narrative of there being some sort of an Islamophobia, while the perpetrators being turned victims, so to say. So I think in that context, we also need to really go out, the Hindu community outside needs to go out and build up this, that there is palpable sort of, Hindu phobia also going on in a large number of countries. And this is something you would recall that was it last year or was it year before that, we had also raised it at the United Nations, that along with the Islamophobia, there also needs to be equal attention provided to Hindu phobia, because that is
I think
also
India
a
had said
reality
that
as far as the world.
apart from Abrahamic faiths, we need to understand that
Yes.
there is phobia of other indigenous or
Religions,
pagan faiths as well.
Absolutely. We had spoken about Hindu phobia, we'd spoken about Christians, phobia against Christians. Sorry, that is the Abrahamic faith,
Yeah.
against Sikhs and, the other
Other,
religions also.
Indic
So I
faiths,
think
other
that
native
is
faiths of
something
other countries, yes.
of the other countries. So that is something also that we need to, look at, we need to work on.
Yeah.
The other is we need to be, like in the case of the United Kingdom, we have been very proactive and we sent out a very strong message when there was violence that was perpetrated against the High Commission, that this indifference of the UK authorities is not acceptable.
Yeah.
I think India has grown as a country. It is a very important economic partner of all these countries that we are speaking about. So I think in the fact that there would be consequences, that there would be a price to pay if appropriate action is not against, without specifying anything, what is it that we have in mind, what is it that we propose to do. But I think the message needs to go out that India is serious about it, just mere condemnation, etc., and expressing the hope that there would be, the perpetrators of the crime would be identified and action would be taken against them. I think we need to go a little further, a little beyond that. And let me also add, I don't have the slightest doubt that, maybe the Ministry of External Affairs is not saying it out in so many words. It doesn't need to say it out in so many words. But I think if through the back channels, through our conversations with our interlocutors at appropriate levels, this message needs to go out to these countries. And I'm sure it is going out to these countries also.
Okay.
The last point I want to make
Yes,
here,
sir, very quickly.
Shivani, is particularly in the case of Canada, it is, and also in the case of the United Kingdom, it is so closely linked to the vote bank politics.
Yeah, precisely.
And that is why, there is this reluctance that we see on the part of the host authorities, the host countries, because they are so very closely intertwined with those particular communities who are carrying out these cases. Like here, the Khalistanis in the United Kingdom, as far as the the Islamic terrorists are concerned, and how they are in terms of demonstrations.
Can I just take that forward with Professor
country.
Paranjpe for a quick minute? I'm running out of time. But Professor, generally I would say that victim mentality, victimhood, and weaponizing victimhood is unsavory. But unfortunately, it looks like that's how the game is played. Is this the way to go for Hindu people in these countries?
Not necessarily. I think our whole tradition, the Sanatan Dharma, has to play this in a different way. For example, we have to point out to the host countries that these are very dangerous elements. Let's not forget AI 182, downed in 1985, if I remember, more than 300 people died. So we have to tell them that it's not that we are saying this just because we are victims, but actually it's for your own safety and betterment. That's one side of it. The other side of it is a principled self-assertion by the diasporic Hindu community, because the future of their children is at stake, So we need not play victims, we need not be aggressors, but we have to be principled, firm, and strong. So I think the Hindu lion need not bite, but it should roar. I'm talking about the lions on our Ashoka stump.
Right. Okay. I think that's a good note to end on. Certainly the voice needs to be heard, and I think that's a good point you made, that ultimately these are snakes in your backyard. That point needs to be established. These are lawless elements. You encourage them against one, tomorrow that tendency will come out against your own people, quote unquote, white Canadians as well. So I leave it on that note. I do thank all of our guests for joining us. Slipping into a very short break. On the other side, we'll get you some top international updates. Now, the Taiwanese president is in the United States, and China, as always, is not feeling very good about it.
This is a big announcement for us right here on CNN News 18. A historic feat for our channel, a historic week for our channel, as 50 weeks of news dominance.
It's not just on linear television that CNN News 18 is number one. We are number one today on YouTube, number one on Facebook, and number one on the BARC TRP ratings for linear television. The team that is bringing this together is a very, very young team. I think it's the fruit of the effort that we have put in. The way different people in this young team stepped up when the challenge presented itself or when the opportunity presented itself, I think that was incredible. We want to thank all our viewers because I don't think we could have achieved this without your support, your love, and your commitment to the kind of journalism, the kind of news stories that we put out there. One part of office, there was another team in the other part of office that would come at a different time. There were multiple teams that were working from home, and it was hell. It really was hell. But I think the way different people in this young team stepped up when the challenge presented itself or when the opportunity presented itself, I think that was incredible. And so the effort really started, in my view, from 2020 onwards, when we went through the sort of cataclysmic events of the COVID-19 surge and the lockdown and so on. What we have seen over the last 1 year, last 50 weeks, is the fruit of all of that hard work, is the fruit of all of that labor. So I think this is an ode to the young team here at CNN News 18 as well. But like I said, it's incredible. It hasn't happened in the history of news television that a channel has dominated the ratings in this fashion for 50 weeks. And I'm also happy to report to our viewers, it's not just on one platform, it's not just on linear television where our dominance has been well established now for the better part of the last 1 year. We're also now the #1 English news channel on YouTube, and it's been the case for the last 8 months. In fact, the month of March, we would close out with 90 million views, I think, which is incredible. It's again unheard of in Indian news television that an English channel from India gets 90 million views. We've had 100 million views plus every month since September of last year. We're again #1 on Facebook. I think last month we closed out at 135 million views on Facebook. So again, I come back to that point. So we're #1 across platforms, whether it is television, whether it is YouTube, whether it is Facebook. And I think, this is an incredible achievement. And like I said, an ode to the young team here that is toiling away day in and day out. It couldn't have been possible without them. And once again, I want to really, really thank all our viewers. We had a big event last week, Rising India, and even just anecdotally, people who came up to me or came up to some of our senior editors and faces, and they were speaking. And the one sort of constant thing that you always heard was, I like watching your channel because you guys don't shout. So I think that's become a bit of an identity, if you will. And again, once again, thank you, viewers. We couldn't have done this without you. I think it's an incredible achievement. Thank you very much from the bottom of my heart and on behalf of everyone here at Team CNN News 18. We hope your love and support and affection continues for the next 50, maybe the next 100 weeks. As they say in cricketing terms, this is just a half century. Abhi century to baki hai.
Zaka, over the last few years, we've also seen a lot of skepticism towards the rating system itself. So I wanted to ask you to break down for our audiences what that number lead actually means. We're showing our audiences 34.8, I believe, on the ticker below. Can you tell us more about what those numbers mean?
Oh, it's been incredible. I mean, over the last, like I said, 50 weeks, the dominance of CNN News 18 on any metric that you take of the BARC ratings has been so clear that I think whether it is the advertisers, whether it is the industry, whether it is just viewers who are watching, I think it's very, very clear to everyone that middle of the road, sober, sane, not hyperventilating news, not partisan news, there is a huge market for it. And I think that is the greatest lesson that we've all learned over the last 1 year, that you don't have to shout from the rooftops, you don't have to beat your chest, you don't have to, wag your finger, as it were, and most of all, you don't have to, put your guests in little boxes and hector them. Really, I think that is the biggest learning for all of us, that there is a huge audience out there which is validating, which is consuming this, and which is happy to partake in this kind of sober, middle-of-the-road news delivery and style and editorial balance, if you will. So I think that has been a great learning experience for all of us. And like I said, going forward, what we are attempting to build, this converged newsroom, because news is today breaking anywhere. It's breaking on your phone. It's not necessarily breaking on television. So if we can, build an ecosystem of reporters, producers, video editors, camera persons who are platform agnostic, I think that is going to be our next big journey over the next year and the next few years. But like I said, I'm happy to report that it's not just the BARC ratings, it's not just on linear television that CNN News 18 is number one. We are number one today on YouTube, number one on Facebook, and number one on the BARC TRP ratings for linear television. So across platforms, this brand, and I think that is really the fitting message. The brand is trusted. The brand is something that people, like somebody told me last week at Rising India, he said, generally I wait for you guys to break a story, because I know that if CNN News 18 is breaking a story, then it has to be right. I mean, it has to be credible. You guys don't just randomly break stories and then retract. So I think that, again, is a great testimony to the brand. The fact that CNN News 18 is a trusted brand. It is a middle-of-the-road brand. It's a non-partisan brand. And I think viewers are liking it. A large majority of viewers are liking it, consuming it, watching it, and giving us feedback on what we are doing right. I think that is an incredible testimony, and I want to once again thank our viewers for this. You can, as I said, consume CNN News 18 content on linear television, on YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram. We are available across platforms, and I think for us internally, that's going to be the road forward, to become platform agnostic. The brand is omnipotent, it's omnipresent. It is platform agnostic. We're going to be experimenting with artificial intelligence, with augmented reality, with virtual reality. We're going to give you the
Welcome back. Taiwan President Tsai Ing-wen met US House Speaker Kevin McCarthy in California amidst outrage and warnings from China. Tsai has become the first Taiwan president to meet with a US House Speaker on US soil. The meeting outside Los Angeles is technically a stopover for the Taiwanese president after her two-country trip in Latin America to visit Taiwan's few remaining official allies. But a pro-China demonstration gathered chanting "One China" as Ms. Tsai arrived. Beijing has continued to claim Taiwan as its own territory and highly objects at Taiwan's contacts with any other countries. The meeting was the second time Tsai met with an American lawmaker in the space of a year, following the in-house Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan last August. Here's more.
A day after the Taiwanese president met with U.S. lawmakers, China is flexing its own diplomatic muscles. It's hosting the French president and the head of the European Commission, while the former Taiwanese president tours the country. China also is warning the U.S. that supporting Taiwanese independence would be a, quote, red line.
It is not our intention to escalate.
House Speaker Kevin McCarthy and Taiwanese President Tsai Ing-wen say independence wasn't the reason for their meeting.
I reiterated Taiwan's commitment to defending the peaceful status quo, where the people of Taiwan may continue to thrive in a free and open society.
Bipartisan members of Congress share that take on the self-governing island.
We take our support for the people of Taiwan seriously and are determined to speak with one voice.
As for the Biden administration, it's downplaying the visit. The U.S. acknowledges China's position that Taiwan is part of its country, but doesn't recognize Chinese sovereignty over the island.
Transits by high-level Taiwanese authorities are nothing new. They're private, they're unofficial. In fact, every Taiwan president has transited the United States.
Let's also get you some big updates we are tracking. The MHA, the Home Ministry, has ordered a CBI inquiry against Oxfam for FCRA violations. The MHA action is coming almost 14 months after it decided not to renew this company's license to collect foreign funds under the FCRA. Sources say that the Oxfam India continued to transfer foreign contribution to various entities even after coming into force of the FCRA Act 2020, which prohibits such transfers. The Oxfam India, which is registered to carry out social activities, routed funds to the Centre for Policy Research through its associates, employees in the form of commissions. So this is another such body that is coming under investigation by the Home Ministry. Remember, during the tenure of this government, a lot of licenses for various NGOs have been either cancelled, not renewed, and there are a few that are also facing inquiries after those cancellations of the licenses. My colleague Arunima has been tracking more on this. Arunima, how significant is this?
Oh, very significant. You know, it's all right to cancel the license or not renew the FCRA license of an NGO, but to then recommend the Central Bureau of Investigation probe means that you feel that, the NGO had been indulging in some kind of a criminality, and that's a serious charge because that doesn't just mean that you can't accept foreign contribution. It could well mean in the, people who take decisions on behalf of your NGO facing a criminal prosecution in a court of law. So in that sense, it's trouble for Oxfam. This is the second NGO in the last month and a half that is facing the sign of a CBI probe. The earlier one was Aman Biradari, which was held by Harsh Mandar. And the Centre for Policy Research, which was also facing scrutiny from Ministry of Home Affairs. The charge also is that CPR was also in some way used by Oxfam India to route its money, foreign contribution, after its FCRA license was not renewed. So at one go, there could be more than one NGOs under the scanner of CPI with this order.
All right. We'll leave it at that, Arunima. Thanks a lot for bringing us more updates. And finally, as I take your leave, we leave you with dramatic eyewitness video that captured the moment a tornado whipped through the field in Iowa, United States. We leave you with that. Thanks a lot for watching.